Alright, so today in this video we are going to talk about layers in Photoshop. So layers are one of the core building blocks in Photoshop, and they allow us to view everything that we put onto our artboard. It allows us to rearrange things. It's where we find all of the elements that we put into our document. Okay, so today we're going to start by downloading these two images. So we're going to go ahead and click on this one. You're going to click on the three dots and you're going to hit open in new window. Then you're going to hit the download arrow. Please do not right click and save the image as. Do not do it that way. That is not going to work, okay? When I give you files, it's important that you always click on the three dots, open a new window, and hit download. Sometimes you might just automatically see that download arrow, and that's fine. As long as you see that download arrow, you can download the original file, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and close those out. The next thing I am going to do is jump into Photoshop. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and open up the brick wall first. So if you get a pop-up, I'm going to hit OK. All right, so remember, the three most important things you have to have open in Photoshop at all time are your toolbars, your layer panel, and that control or your option bar up at the top when I open my file. So I'm going to go to Open. And I'm going to go to my download folder. If your download folder looks like this and you have to search through all of these files to fix that, what you can do is click here and go date added. This is going to show you the most recent thing you have added to your download folder. Okay. You can also go in and delete a lot of your stuff probably. I just have not. All right, so we're going to download open up our brick wall first. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this and I'm going to hit open. And this is going to open up that brick wall. So if you notice here on my layer panel, I have one layer, it's titled background, okay? So we can change the name, we can unlock our layers. So this is important when you have a background, you don't want something to move, you don't want to edit something, you don't want to mess something up. You can lock and unlock your layers. Okay, so I just clicked on that little lock and it unlocked this layer. You can always go back and where this is lock, and you've got some options here. We're just going to lock everything, okay? And it will lock the layer that is selected. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this layer, and this is important when you have like more than 5 layers going on, because the more layers you have, you're going to be searching for things that you need to be able to modify and edit. Okay, so I'm going to double click and I'm just going to name this brick wall. So it's important to name it what it is, that way you know what you're looking for. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and lock that layer in place. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to bring in our first image from outside of Photoshop. So we're going to go to File and we're going to go to Place Embedded. So there's two places, Place Embedded and Place Linked. I'm going to show you both of them right now. So I'm going to go Place Embedded, and what this does, I'm going to find my orange. It takes this original file and it places it inside your document. Okay, so all you got to do is hit place, and unlike Illustrator where you have to drag it out, it'll drop it in there. So if this orange file was larger than this brick wall file, it may look like this outside and you'd have to shrink it down. Thankfully it did not, so it's good. I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit larger than what it came in as, right? So I'm pulling from the sides or the corner. Unlike Illustrator, you do not have to hold the shift key in Photoshop. To distort it, that is when you would hold the shift key, okay? So we don't want that, so don't distort your images when you bring them into Photoshop. All right, so the next thing I want to show you is how to commit this transformation now that I've made it larger or brought it in. So I'm going to click on this this check mark right here, and that will commit my transformation. Okay, you always want to make sure to do that when you bring in anything into Photoshop. So now I have a second layer. It's titled Fresh Orange because that's the name of the file. I can double click and change it to orange number 1. Okay. The next thing I'm going to show you is how to do what a placed linked file is. Okay, so this picture of this orange right here is never going to change unless I do some sort of adjustment inside Photoshop, inside of this document. I'm going to go ahead and place that second orange, but I'm going to go to place linked this time. So I'm going to go to place linked, find my orange again, and hit place. It looks exactly the same. There's nothing different, right? Same orange. I'm gonna go ahead and commit that when I made it larger. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up the orange file. So I'm gonna go to File, Open, and open it all by itself. Okay, pretty simple, looks the same, no different. It's just cut out all by itself. This transparent background, or this checkerboard background, means that it's transparent. So if I were to save this orange, it'll come out looking just like this. There won't have any like outside anything around it, no white box or anything. Okay, that's what that small checkerboard means. So I'm gonna go right here. This is my adjustment layer. I'm gonna click here. Oops, I don't wanna do color lookup. I'm gonna click and I'm going to go to hue saturation. These are all of our adjustments that we can do to make a non-destructive edit in Photoshop. Okay, and that's really important. We're gonna talk about that in a few minutes. So I'm gonna click on hue saturation and I'm gonna show you a magic trick, the first of many in Photoshop. I'm gonna adjust these sliders, and this is how you change the color of an object in Photoshop. Okay, pretty cool. All right, so now you notice I have two layers. I have layer one and I have a hue saturation layer. Okay, I'm gonna close out my properties panel. If I ever needed to come back in and adjust that color, I'm gonna double click on this little icon right here. This is your thumbnail and this is a layer mask, and we'll talk about layer masks later. Okay, so this thumbnail right here will allow you to open up your adjustment panel or your property panel again and make another change. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to File and I'm going to go to Export, and I'm going to export this as a PNG, okay, because that was the original file type. So I'm going to hit Export as a PNG. I'm not going to make any changes and I'm going to hit Save. It's asking me to replace and I'm going to say yes. So what this did is it updated my original file, and now that linked file is changed. Okay. If at any time I would want to make changes to this, I would make sure to save this as a Photoshop document. So I would come into my file, Save As, make sure it's a Photoshop document, and that will save my layers so I can come back in and change it anytime. Okay. So that is the difference between a linked and an embedded file. I usually just do embedded files and then just replace it. It's a personal preference, honestly. Okay, so now we're going to talk about our layer order or our stacking order in Photoshop. So what I want you to do is I want you to click, we're going to put this guy right in the middle, and then we're going to move this guy right in the middle. Okay, and if you notice, anytime I click on an object, it's selecting the object I'm looking for, right? So if I click on this one, it'll click on that one. If I want to move this one, it's going to allow me to move this one. If I wanted to automatically or manually select my layers, I would come up here to auto select, and this is important when you have a million things on your artboard, and I can only move the layer that I have selected. Okay, so if I wanted to move this one, I would click on the layer and then come over here and I can move it. If I clicked on this one, I can't move the purple one now. I can only move the orange one. Okay, so when you've got a lot of things going on your artboard, that's going to be important to uncheck because you don't want to move 1,000 or the wrong thing. Okay, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about your stacking order. So right now I have my purple orange in front. It's on top of my layer stack. If I wanted this orange to be on the top, I would drag my layer above it. Okay, you can reorder your layers at any time as long as they're not locked. It shouldn't, yeah, it's not, oh, it did let me. Okay, so it did let me move it. I think before it would not, but yes, you can adjust your layers, move them around, change the order of them. Okay, so keep that in mind when we are working. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is editing. So destructive editing would be if we were to come in here, I'm going to hide this layer. Okay, I just turned off the visibility. It's still there. If I turned it back on, it's there. Okay, it just hides it. So destructive editing is when we actually modify the original layer. Okay, so that would be like if I were to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and instead of getting that second layer, it's going to modify my original layer. Okay, that's called destructive editing. I can't go back and fix that unless I do Command Z. So if I were to save that file just like this, that's it. That's my file now forever. Okay, so you want to make sure to do non-destructive editing at any possible time. Okay, so try to avoid destructive editing, which is where you would create an adjustment layer. You can come back and modify it at any time. You can make changes. You can save the Photoshop document and you're good and you're safe. Okay, so there may be times where we can't do that, and when we get to that point, we will talk about it. All right, so I want you to do me a favor now that you have created your oranges, and we're going to go to our type tool really quick. So we're going to click on the letter T in our toolbar, and we are going to click horizontal type tool. So remember, if you have that little tiny arrow right there, that means you have more than one tool. We're just going to use our horizontal type tool. We're going to come up here and we're going to pick a nice bold font. You can change your font style. You can change your size right here. We're going to make it nice and big, so we're going to type in 300 points. You can type that number in, or you can click 300 if it's available for you. We're going to not talk about Alicing just yet. We're going to do that a little bit later. We're going to hit none if that is selected. And then we are going to either center justify, left or right justify. This is left, this is center, and this is right. So I'm going to start with center. I'm going to change my color to something super bright so you can see it against this wall, hopefully. Hit OK. And then I'm going to click one time. Do not click and drag to draw out a text box. We're just going to click one time. Okay? And I am going to type out something. All right, so go ahead and type out anything you want. I don't care what it says. And there's my type, okay? I'm gonna go back to my move tool. So when you click on your move tool, I should have said this. This is how you move things around, right? So if I wanted to put something, move it, I could go to my move tool. I'm gonna go back to my type tool. You have to make sure you're on your type tool, and I'm either gonna put my cursor right here or I can highlight it. It's completely up to you. You just put it right there. And then, so your justifications are here. So you've got your left, you've got your center, and you've got your right justification, okay? So depending on what your project is, what you're doing, that's where that would be. You can also go to your character panel from your window menu and open up all of those options that we had in Illustrator, okay? Your paragraph panel is where you're gonna find your centers, your lefts, your rights as well. Okay. All right. Your warp tool is going to be right here. Photoshop doesn't have as many amazing type tools as Illustrator, but it does have a few. Okay. So I'm going to pick something. I don't care which pick, and you can modify it. This is how you get that warp or the arc. Okay. This is how you get the wave option. All right. So that's how you do that. And then at any time, I'm going to hit OK. And come in, do something else with something else. As long as this is a type layer, it says the letter T right here, and it's showing that I have a warp on it. I can come in and change that as needed. All right, I'm gonna have you go ahead and save this file. So we're gonna go to File. Oops, I have to get off of, I have to commit my type. So I'm gonna hit the check mark or Return or Enter on your keyboard. And I'm gonna save my file. So I'm gonna go to File, Save As, and we're going to give it a name if it doesn't have one already. So I'm going to go ahead and name it my first initial, last name, underscore brick wall. Make sure it is a Photoshop document or a PSD. This is going to preserve my layers so I can come back in and change these anytime. Okay, so Photoshop. Hit save, and I want you to go to File, Export, and we're going to go to Export As. This document or file is going to look a little bit different. This is where we save it as a PNG or a JPEG or a GIF, okay? So we're going to go to JPEG, and this is going to save it as a JPEG or an image file, Okay, we're gonna leave all of these things the same. We don't need to change the resolution or the canvas size right now. And we're gonna hit export. And then we're gonna go ahead and make sure our name is still the same and hit save. Okay, now I want you to turn those two files into Google Classroom, into this assignment, and then you're gonna go ahead and work on your vocab for this lesson. Okay, so you're gonna use these notes to answer these questions. You need to go open with Google Docs. It should, if it hasn't already created a copy for you, it should. If it doesn't, please make sure to go to File, make a copy, and you can rename it vocab 2. That way you know what you're looking for in Google Drive. Okay, so today you are turning in your Photoshop file and your JPEG file of your brick wall and your oranges and your vocab.